Hey everybody, this is Dr. Flight. Hope you're doing fantastic. This video will extend and be part of the segmenting, targeting, and positioning videos that we do. This concept is really three separate activities all kind of tied into the same process. And so in another video, you saw steps 1 and 2, which dealt with segmentation. In this video, we're going to assume that you have segmented the market and that you are evaluating the segments now. So we want to evaluate the segments to determine which one or ones are the most important and the ones that are the most viable for us and the ones that make the most sense for us to try to reach. So again, we're looking at groups of consumers that behave or act in a similar way. And so we're now deciding which groups we want to look at. So that's what we call targeting. And then we actually make the decision to target one or several based on the criteria we've established and how we've evaluated them. So there are 5 or 6 different ways we can evaluate a segment. And so we'll talk a little bit about each one of these. So after we perform segmentation, we want to, again, ultimately decide which segments, which groups of consumers make the most sense for us. So again, we're going to look at these kind of in order and go from there. All right, so the first or one of the 5 different criteria that we'll look at is something called identifiability. And when we want to identify, when we use this term, it basically means that we want to be able to distinguish one segment from another. We want to be certain that the different segments that we've created contain different people. And that one person isn't going to be in 2 different segments at the same time. So that's kind of an interesting idea, but we want to be able to identify them that way so that we know when we look at a consumer, we want to identify which segment the consumer's in and which one they're not in or shouldn't be in. So we ask then if the segments are distinct, if they're separate or different from each other, and moreover, when we do that, by default or by definition, those segments will require different approaches to reach them. So if I had 2 different segments and I used the exact same marketing mix to reach both of them, then they're really not different. The segments are not different. If I used the same approach to reach both market segments, then why would I suggest that the market segments are different? They're not identifiably different in that case. So you'll know they're identifiable because they'll be distinct from each other. We'll be able to use different marketing approaches, and some approaches will be better or worse for each different segment, and that's how we'll distinguish them. Finally, we'll be able to identify who is in the segment, and we'll be able to identify which segment each individual consumer should be in. So that's the way we think about identifiability. That's one reason. That's one way we know that segmentation was done properly. Another consideration as we move forward, I mean, if we can't identify the segments, if there's not enough distinction, then we can't really move forward and they're not good for us to choose. Another thing that helps us choose a good target audience is its size. So how big is the market that we're looking at? How big is the segment? And in this, we actually want to think of literally like numbers, like how many buying units are there in a particular market segment. And this is, so the term substantial means this. Is the market size substantial enough for us to do business and make a profit? It's basically what we want to do. Some market segments are super, super loyal and they're really good customers, but there are only very few of them, and we can't like cover our fixed costs if we only have a few consumers. Sometimes we need the volume of sales, in other words, to make profit. And if we don't have that volume, then the market segment isn't substantial enough. So the buying power then has to be significant enough to support our profitability. So size is one of the components that we use to measure that. Another idea is this idea, again, it goes back to the marketing mix, is we got customers, market segments that we want to be able to reach with our messaging. So through communication, we also want to be able to reach them through distribution channels. And so sometimes we ask, how easy is it for us to reach the actual customer? Can we get our products distributed to them? And kind of want to look at that. So when we talk about reach, then we want to make sure that we're building awareness, that we're able to communicate what the product's benefits are, that we have the product, so that consumers become motivated or under kind of desirous of our product. So this idea of being able to reach them and for them to understand what our product is all about, who we are, is another component that we have. Okay, so reachability, the ability to come in contact with and bring our product to the actual customer. Okay, so we've had a couple things here so far that you might not think of. First, the size, our ability to reach the product, the customer, and then our ability to identify and separate these groups, define what market segments the customer is going to be in. Number 4, responsiveness. So when we talk about responsiveness, what we mean is when we make a marketing activity or engagement, does our customer respond? So if I raised price or lowered price, would my customer buy less or more of my product? If I advertised more, would that influence my customer to buy more? I mean, typically those are positively related. And so in other words, when I do my marketing activities, will they influence the market? That's responsiveness. Will they act and behave? Simultaneously, one of the ideas is everybody in that segment should behave the same way. They should react similarly to the activities that I do. So in other words, if I make a marketing mix change and some of the market agrees, adopts it, and some don't, some respond to it, some don't, then that might mean that our segmentation is flawed because they should all act the same way. They should all act similarly anyways. So that's kind of, so if they don't react by buying to our market mix, then it may mean that our segment is bad, or maybe our messaging is bad, or something that we're doing is bad. But generally speaking, if they're not consistent in how they respond to our messaging or our marketing behavior, then that might be a problem, or that might be an issue. And we can think of different examples out there. There's a Cadillac here, which is a luxury vehicle. And if you position this particular product towards a market segment that is motivated by luxury products, they're probably, price might not be, they're going to react to price differently. Like they're probably not going to be as price sensitive. However, if some of the people in that segment you've defined are very, very price conscious, then they're not going to react the same way to your pricing strategy as other people who are luxury buyers will. So in other words, if you mixed in a segment with luxury buyers and non-luxury buyers and tried to position a luxury product to them, some of the market will react one way, the other part of the market will react a different way. That suggests that the segmenting was done improperly. And that would not be a good segment to try to reach. Okay, a couple more here, or what we last kind of moving into here is profitability. So this is the big one, I would say. Size, substantialness, and profitability are probably the two largest or most important ideas. So when you go to a market segment, some market segments you can make more money in than in other ones. One is the market segment will pay more for your products. Some market segments will pay more for your products. Also, some market segments are less expensive for us to reach. So think about that. Think about profitability. You can gain profitability by bringing in more revenue or lowering your costs. So some segments are better to reach because they cost less to go into. Some simply because they'll spend more money with you. So some key ideas driving profitability, maybe, as I mentioned, the substantialness of the market and its size, the rate in which customers buy your product, the ability to spend money, disposable income, for instance. Some segments have more disposable income than others. Future growth rates, competitiveness in the marketplace. So do you have to, for instance, watch your pricing strategy because you have a lot of competition? Or are you more like a competitive monopolist where you're maybe the only one around who does your particular product, so you can price a little higher and be more profitable? And then, of course, costs, like I mentioned. Okay, so profitability comes in a lot of different ways, but each market segment is different. I mean, you can make more money in some markets than you can in others. Okay, so think about these, focus on these in terms of how we evaluate a market segment. Last thing we want to talk about here, and this is kind of a big deal. At some point, you want to create some type of a valuation in dollars as terms of how valuable a market segment is. There's a few different ways to do this. You can calculate something called customer lifetime value by market segment. That's a very popular way to do it. Another thing we can do is we can simply look at some type of calculation that will give us profitability for a potential segment. And so what we do is we have like multiple segments and we create a calculation for each segment and then just simply compare them and decide which segment's better for us to go into. So here's an example where we're positioning a cell phone, and one of the market segments under consideration are children under 15. Now here's some data for you to think about, and then we're going to put this together and we're going to calculate profitability. Okay, so the segment size is 6 million individuals. So we could have potentially 6 million buyers of this product. The adoption percentage, so what this is of the 6 million, 35% of the 6 million we project will buy this particular product. They're only going to buy one, and the average price is going to be $350. Now, they're only going to buy one for a long period of time. This is not something that you repeat purchase often. So this is called a consumer durable. This is something that's bought once in a very long time. Our profit margin, if we sell a product, so when we're talking about profit margin, what we do is we take costs and we take our price, and the percentage of profit that's there, the percentage of the amount between those two is what we call profit margin percentage. So 10% of the sales price is accounted for in profit. 90% would be our costs. Okay, fixed costs, which is something that we have to pay off, are $50 million. These are costs that are not associated to each unit of production. So part of our sales have to have to contribute to that, right? And then, so we take this data together, we're going to calculate something called profitability. All right, now you can pause this, you should write this down, you can think about how you calculate profitability. And each of the components that you just saw are in this. And so segmentation size, the adoption rate, the price, the purchase rate, in this case it's just one or one time, This could be a percentage or a time. It's really, a rate is oftentimes a percentage, but this is like one time thing. If you bought it more than once, it'd be 2 or 3 or something like that. Profit margin and then fixed costs, and then that's how we'll do this. These are all multiplied together. Okay, so here's the example. Okay, so our segment size is 6 million, and the adoption rate was 35%. So 2.1 million would be our estimated number of units that will be sold. Now, we may not sell all of those, just depending on how you set up the problem. This could be a 35% adoption rate for the industry. It's probably not a 35% adoption rate for my specific product. My version of the cell phone is probably for the whole industry. So 2.1 million, in this case, it seems like that would be the total number of units sold for the industry. Again, it's kind of how you define that adoption rate number, but we take our segment size by the adoption rate and we get demand. So now we got to take that demand number and we got to calculate it by how much revenue we're going to bring in. So we know the price is $350 and we know it's going to be purchased just once. Okay, so it's not like they're spending $350 multiple times in the near term anyways. So we're just going to do one-time horizon. So it'll be one time purchase of $350 times our demand in units. So that's 2.1 million. So gross revenue for this particular product is $735 million for this market segment. Okay, that's the estimated dollar revenue that's going to come in. Now, that's total revenue. Now we have to kind of back out of that our profits, so take costs out. And so what we've got is a profit margin of 10%. So when we do that, what we're doing is we're taking out the variable costs, basically. So 10% of 735 million would be 73,500,000. Okay, so it's simply 10%, that 0.1 you see there, 10% times our gross revenues. And that's something that we're going to call contribution margin. Contribution margin is something that contributes to our fixed costs. Remember that fixed costs we had? So we have to contribute, we have to pay off our fixed costs. And so we take some of our profits to do that, or some of the money built into the price and the revenue that we gather in to do that. So we're going to take out that 50 million of our fixed costs, and we're going to be left with a profit of $23,500. 23,500,000. Okay, so that was a lot, right? There was a lot of calculations. Now keep in mind, these are all multiplications, and you've got about 5 or 6 different variables going on here that you need to know about, but they are each just multiplied against each other. So it's not hard. You just have to remember what's going on and kind of do a logical type of approach here. Okay, so that's one way to think about profitability. We want to do this for each market segment so we know which market segments are most profitable. Here's one last example. This is Camillo's Lawn Service. We have 2 different market segments. We have homeowners and we have businesses. So this is a case where we're going to compare 2 market segments and decide, kind of understand at least the profitability of each one. There are a lot more homeowners than there are businesses. In this case, there are 75,000 homeowners in this area where Camillo can do the lawn service business. There, in that same space, there's 1,000 businesses. So, okay, what percentage of homeowners will the lawn service attract? They estimate 1%. What percentage of businesses? Be 20%. Okay, move on down, purchase behavior. How much will each market segment typically spend and how often will they do it? So in this case here, we have frequency of purchase. This isn't once like the cell phone. This is several times over the course of a year. The homeowners once a month, businesses almost twice a month, right? 12 times, 20 times. Businesses are also spending a lot more each time they have the service performed. Okay, so just kind of think about these two market segments and how they behave and kind of what's going on. We have different profit margins. So this is like the internal cost based on the revenue that's brought in, but the internal cost of doing business between these two segments. Different fixed costs as well. When we take all that into account, we do the multiplication all the way through, we calculate profit for each segment. Okay, so just, that formula we just saw a little bit ago, that's the same one used here to identify profit. So if you take your time, I would suggest pausing the video and doing the multiplication to come up with these figures. Okay, this is practice for you, okay? So segment profit, business, homeowners, well, clearly the business segment's far more profitable. Now you have to have a lot more fixed costs. You have to have a bigger inventory. You have to have more equipment. But once you're in the business, you're making a lot more money than you are from homeowners. Okay, so, if you could only choose one of these two market segments, you'd have to decide which one. Again, like I said, the cost, you need $1 million to be in the market segment that satisfies businesses, whereas you need less than half of that to be in the business to satisfy homeowners. So if you have that capital and if you can build your infrastructure, then the business segment is far more profitable for you to engage in. Okay, so this is an example of evaluating market segments to choose and to target one that you want to go after. Okay, so identify and define the 5 different criteria used for each, used to evaluate market segments: substantiability or size, identifiability, reachability, the responsiveness of the market, and then finally profitability. And then the last thing that we want to do is actually calculate profitability using some of the data that we have available to us by segment, so that we can compare segments and we can understand which ones are best to go into. Okay, so this is a lot. This is a lot. This has some calculations. You'll need a calculator to work through these. But this is basic business, and evaluating opportunities is one of the things that we do. So this is something that would be typical in a business environment. So let me know if you have any questions. Again, make sure you go back and pause this video as often as you need to, watch it as much as you need to, and have a great day.